Global warming, Part 3. What can be done?
Table of Contents, Global Warming Part 3.
Preface. Global warming, Part 3. What can be done? What can be done to reduce global warming? Learn about tidal power, hybrid and electric cars, more efficient ways of electric power generation, and energy conservation.
Dr. Sydney Soclof. Dr. Sydney22@gmail.com. 2023. Narration by Dr. Sydney Soclof.
Zoe Phonemes.
And Nathan Koltov. For a complete discussion of YouTube navigation, please go to tiny.1/ytnavigator.
Global warming, what can be done?
What can we do about global warming?
Conserve, adapt, and develop.
How to help prevent global warming? The most practical way to prevent global warming is to not use as much of the stuff that creates greenhouse gases. On a local level, people can help by using less energy.
We can reduce, reuse, and recycle.
Let's reuse. Let's recycle. Make it into something
Ranking the 3 R's of reduce, reuse, and recycle in order of importance. Should we give reduce the first place, followed by reuse and a third place for recycle? Or should they all rank the same?
Adapt. Limit development in low elevation coastal regions. Plan for changes in water resources. And plan for changes in agricultural areas.
This shows the projected worldwide percentage change in agricultural production due to global warming.
The most effective way to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases is to develop non-fossil fuel energy sources. Hydroelectric power, solar power, wind and tidal power, geothermal power, and nuclear power are all ways to cut down emissions.
This shows the percentage of electrical output from renewable energy sources for several leading countries. Tidal power.
The highest tides on planet Earth occur in the Bay of Fundy.
The water level at high tide can be as much as 45 feet, or 16 meters higher than at low tide.
This is the Bay of Fundy between the provinces of Nova Scotia and New Brunswick in Canada.
The Bay of Fundy is an inlet of the Atlantic Ocean, between the Canadian provinces of Nova Scotia on the south and east, and New Brunswick on the north and west.
The daily tidal flow is some 70 billion cubic feet, or 2 billion cubic meters. That is more than 9 times the daily discharge of the Mississippi River.
The Bay of Fundy is famous for its fast-running tides. As the tide rushes up the narrowing, funnel-shaped bay, high-crested waves rise to 52 feet, or 16 meters.
This is the Bay of Fundy. At high tide and at low tide, boats rest on wooden stands at low tide to keep them from toppling over.
At high tide, the upstream force of ocean water into the rivers causes whirlpools, tidal waves, and reversing falls.
A tidal power plant is used to harness some of this tidal power to generate electricity.
This is the Tidal Power generating station at Annapolis Royal in Nova Scotia.
This tidal power station generates more than 30 million kilowatt-hours of electricity per year. That is enough electricity to supply 4,500 homes.
Water is stored here during high tide.
Then the gates are closed.
Water goes out through the turbine.
Tidal Power sea-bottom turbines.
We will now have a video on tidal energy.
Tidal power. Tidal power is a form of hydropower that converts the energy from the natural rise and fall of the tides into electricity. Tides are caused by the combined effects of gravitational forces exerted by the moon, the sun, and the rotation of the earth. Tidal plants can only be installed along coastlines. Coastlines often experience 2 high tides and 2 low tides on a daily basis. The difference in water levels must be at least 5 meters high to produce electricity. Tidal electricity can be created from several technologies, the main ones being tidal barrages, tidal fences, and tidal turbines. Tidal barrages are the most efficient tidal energy sources. A tidal barrage is a dam that utilizes the potential energy generated by the change in height between high and low tides. This energy turns a turbine or compresses air, which in turn creates electricity. Tidal fences are turbines that operate like giant turnstiles, whereas tidal turbines are similar to wind turbines, only underwater. In both cases, electricity is generated when the mechanical energy of tidal currents turns turbines connected to a generator. The generator produces electricity. Ocean currents generate relatively more energy than air currents because ocean water is 832 times more dense than air and therefore applies greater force on the turbines. Tidal power is easy to install and renewable, having no direct greenhouse gas emissions and a low environmental impact. Because the ocean's tidal patterns are well understood, tidal energy is a very predictable energy source, making it highly attractive for electrical grid management. This sets it apart from other renewables that can be more unpredictable. However, adoption of tidal technologies has been slow, and so far the amount of power generated using tidal power plants is very small. This is due largely to the very specific site requirements necessary to produce tidal electricity. Additionally, tide cycles do not always match the daily consumption patterns of electricity and therefore do not provide sufficient capacity to satisfy demand. That's tidal power.
A hydroelectric facility is a power plant that uses the energy of falling or flowing water to generate electricity.
Water is directed over a series of turbines, which convert the potential and kinetic energy of water into the rotational motion of the turbine. The turbine is then attached to a generator to generate electricity.
We will now have a video on hydropower.
Hydropower. Hydropower, or hydroelectricity, refers to the conversion of energy from flowing water into electricity. It is considered a renewable energy source because the water cycle is constantly renewed by the sun. One of the first uses of hydroenergy was for mechanical milling, such as grinding grains. But today, modern hydro plants produce electricity using turbines and generators. The mechanical energy created by moving water spins rotors on a turbine. This turbine is connected to an electromagnetic generator which produces electricity when the turbine spins. There are 2 main types of hydroelectricity production: dams and run-of-river. Hydro dams utilize the potential energy from dammed water to produce electricity. A dam is a large barrier constructed to raise the level of water and control its flow. The elevation created by the dam creates gravitational force for turning the turbine when water is released. Some dams also contain an additional reservoir at their base where water is stored to be pumped to the higher reservoir for release when electricity is in demand. This is referred to as pumped storage hydro. The second form of hydroelectricity production is run-of-river hydro. Run-of-river still uses turbines and generators, but relies on natural water flow rates of rivers, diverting just a portion of the water through turbines. Because run-of-river hydro is subject to natural water variability, it is more intermittent than dammed hydro. There are various sizes of hydro plants that produce electricity. Large hydro, greater than 30 megawatts, small hydro, 100 kilowatts to 30 megawatts, and micro hydro, less than 100 kilowatts. The Hoover Dam in the United States is a whopping 2,074 megawatts, which is enough to serve 1.3 million people. Of all renewable energy sources, hydropower holds the largest share of worldwide electricity production. Hydropower has several benefits. It is a cost-competitive form of electricity, even though the initial building cost can be high. It is quite reliable compared to other renewable options and pairs well with other sources as it can be used as baseload power. In some cases, dammed reservoirs can also help with flood control and be a reliable water supply for communities. There are also some concerns with hydropower, especially when it comes to large dams. Damming a river has a major impact on the local environment, changing wildlife habitats, blocking fish passage, and often forcing people in riverside communities to move out of their homes. In addition, dam failures can be catastrophic, claiming the lives of those living downstream. Hydro plants are also not completely free of greenhouse gas emissions. As with most forms of energy, carbon dioxide emissions happen during construction, particularly due to the large quantities of cement used, and plant matter in the flooded areas makes methane, another greenhouse gas, as it decays underwater. That's hydropower.
This is the world electricity generation in 2015. Hydropower provided the world with around 16% of total electric power generation. Some of the largest producers include China, Canada, and Brazil.
This is the world electricity generation in 1971. We see that the share of hydropower was 23% at that time.
This is a look at world energy production from 1971 to 2015.
This is a look at the world energy production in 1971. Hydro is in third place after coal and natural gas.
This is a look at the world energy production in 2015. Hydro is still in third place after coal and natural gas. Energy conservation.
Automobile fuel efficiency.
This is a graph showing the average miles per gallon for cars from 1949 to 2005. We see that automobile fuel economy has increased drastically since the 1970s.
This is a graph of the fuel economy of cars and trucks in the United States from 1975 to 2010.
This shows how average U.S. vehicle CO2 emissions have drastically decreased between 1975 and the present day.
This is a graph showing the fuel economy of cars and trucks by model year from 1970 to 2004.
This is a graph showing the average miles per gallon for cars from 1975 to 2000.
This is a graph showing the average miles per gallon for trucks from 1975 to 2000.
This is another graph showing the average miles per gallon for trucks from 1975 to 2000.
This is a graph showing the average weight and miles per gallon for cars and trucks from 1975 to 2000.
This is the Toyota Prius hybrid automobile.
This is a diagram of the series power system of a hybrid car, in which an electric motor is always used to power the wheels. The gasoline engine is used to charge the battery when needed.
This is a diagram of the parallel power system of a hybrid car. The wheels are powered either by the battery and electric motor, or the gasoline engine when required.
This is a bar graph of the energy efficiency of cars. This is the net efficiency, not just of the car itself, but taking into account the energy needed to generate the electricity. We see that electric cars that use electric energy generated by fossil fuel power plants do not have a greater overall energy efficiency than gasoline-powered cars.
This is a comparison of the 5-year fuel cost of hybrids versus non-hybrid cars.
This is a comparison of the fuel cost of hybrids versus non-hybrid cars.
This is a comparison of the tailpipe emissions versus energy produced by hybrid and non-hybrid cars.
Driving slower saves fuel.
Driving slower really does save fuel.
We asked questions.
Now we want some answers.
Hey Doc. You didn't say anything about hydrogen cars.
Hydrogen and electric cars are similar. Both cars get their motive power from an electric motor.
The essential difference is in energy storage in an electric car. The energy is charged straight to the car's batteries, which then release the power to the motor.
A hydrogen car is one of the least efficient, most expensive ways to reduce greenhouse gases.
In a hydrogen car, hydrogen is produced from water with an electric current. Then the hydrogen is turned into electricity in a fuel cell. The electricity then powers the motor.
In this process, most of the original energy is wasted, and only about 20% is available for use. The electric car has 3 times better efficiency than the hydrogen car.
This shows the energy efficiency of hydrogen and electric cars.
Hey Doc. How about comparing the cost of the energy sources?
This is a comparison of the capital costs of the various renewable energy sources.
This is a comparison of the delivered costs of the various renewable energy sources.
This is a comparison of the approximate cost of the various renewable and non-renewable energy sources.
This is a graph of the cost of various renewable energy sources over recent years.
Chapter 5. Energy conservation at home.
This is a chart of typical home energy usage.
This is a breakdown of the dollar cost of home energy use. Note that heating and cooling account for about 1/2 of the total.
Home heating.
This shows the areas of heat, or cooling, loss in homes.
This again shows where heat is lost around the home.
This is a graph showing the improvement in home energy consumption from 1950 to the present.
Lighting.
This shows the electrical energy in watts required per 1,000 lumens of light for incandescent, LED, and fluorescent light sources.
These are 3 basic sources for home illumination: incandescent, compact fluorescent, and LED.
This is a comparison of incandescent, halogen, compact fluorescent, and LED light sources.
This is an LED spotlight.
This is a comparison of incandescent and LED light sources.
We will now have a video on lighting cost and lifespan.
Hi, I'm Vance, and welcome to Spec Sense. Incandescent bulbs are being phased out of production as LED technology improves. LEDs have a long lifespan. They are efficient and have a low energy cost. Even with the slightly higher upfront cost, these bulbs can save a lot of money over time. Now, energy usage isn't the only thing to consider. One hidden factor is the time and labor needed to replace a bulb. For fixtures that are difficult to reach, it's even more important to choose a light with a longer lifespan. Let's compare a few different scenarios. At 8 hours a day, a tungsten bulb will last a year, while an LED will last a decade. At 24 hours a day, a tungsten bulb will only last a few months, while an LED will still last 3 years. As you can see, between energy efficiency and lifespan, LEDs are the most cost-effective lights available. Now, if you like this and want to see more tutorials and informational videos, then subscribe to our channel. And if you need help, you can always call or visit an Amory location to talk with our knowledgeable staff. Thanks for watching.
We will now have a video on the benefits of LED lighting.
LED bulbs can produce the same amount of light as incandescent or fluorescent bulbs, but using less energy or watts. This means they produce more lumens per watt. LED bulbs also have a longer rated life. On average, they will last over 20 years. To put this in perspective, if you installed an LED bulb the same day a baby was born, the bulb would not need to be replaced until after their college graduation. LEDs do not burn out the same way that incandescent or CFL bulbs do. They are considered to be at the end of their life when they reach something called L70, which is when the bulb is only producing 70% of its original light output. As it burns towards the end of its rated life, the LED's light output or lumen maintenance will begin to fade. On average, only one LED will be thrown away for every 5 CFLs or 30 incandescents, thus reducing the amount of waste and pollution on Earth, otherwise known as our carbon footprint. If every household in the US switched one bulb to an LED, it would be like taking 800,000 cars off the road, or like planting 400 million trees. And the energy saved could light up 3 million homes for a whole year. 20% of the world's energy usage is from lighting. This could be reduced to only 4% if all lighting were converted to LED. If you could collect the energy wasted by an incandescent bulb, it would be enough to light up 9 LEDs of the same brightness. An easy way to explain this wasted energy is by the heat emitted by the bulb. For instance, an incandescent gives off enough heat to bake a cake, while an LED bulb remains cool to the touch. This wasted energy translates to wasted money. The average LED will save you more than $100 over the life of the bulb. Look around at the number of sockets you have. The savings start to stack up. In addition to the energy savings, LED bulbs will reduce maintenance time and costs. So simple math tells us that less energy use, plus longer life, plus reduced maintenance costs equals saving some green. And don't forget the added bonus of going green at the same time. Make the switch to LED and start saving today. Visit bulbs.com or call 888-455-2800 and speak with a lighting specialist for more information about LEDs and possible utility rebates.
Home appliances.
This is a comparison of the energy use and cost of appliances.
The following chart shows that the average refrigerator today uses 75% less energy and costs half as much, despite being slightly larger than refrigerators from the early 1970s.
This is a graph showing the improvement in refrigerator efficiency from the 1970s to the 1990s.
This is a graph showing the improvement in refrigerator efficiency from 1947 to 2002.
This is a graph showing the improvement in refrigerator efficiency from 1972 to 1997.
This is the energy guide that serves to compare refrigerator models.
This is the energy guide that serves to compare refrigerator models.
Chapter 16. Carbon sequestration.
Carbon sequestration. I never heard of it. What is it?
Carbon sequestration is the capturing of atmospheric carbon dioxide by various means to prevent it from entering the atmosphere as a greenhouse gas.
The simplest way to sequester carbon is to preserve trees and to plant more. Trees, especially young and fast-growing ones, soak up a great deal of carbon dioxide, break it down in photosynthesis, and store the carbon in new wood.
Worldwide, forests are being cut down at an alarming rate, particularly in the tropics in many areas. There is little regrowth as land loses fertility, or is changed to other uses, such as farming or building housing developments. Reforestation could offset these losses and counter part of the greenhouse buildup.
Many companies and governments in the United States, Norway, Brazil, Malaysia, Russia, and Australia have initiated reforestation projects.
Carbon dioxide gas can also be sequestered directly.
Carbon dioxide has traditionally been injected into oil wells to force more petroleum out of the ground or sea floor.
Now it is being injected simply to isolate it underground in oil fields, coal beds, or aquifers.
At natural gas drilling platforms, carbon dioxide brought to the surface with the natural gas is captured and re-injected into an aquifer from which it cannot escape.
The same process can be used to store carbon dioxide released by a power plant, factory, or any large stationary source.
Deep ocean waters could also absorb a great deal of carbon dioxide. The feasibility and environmental effects of both these options are now under study by international teams.
We will now have a video on carbon sequestration.
Since the 1970s, carbon dioxide from natural geologic deposits has been injected into oil-bearing reservoirs to extend their producing life.
Today in the U.S., 2.5 billion cubic feet per day of carbon dioxide is bought and sold. Now, of that 2.5 billion cubic feet per day, 94% of that market is the production of large quantities of CO2 that are purchased, transported, and injected into the ground in order to produce crude oil from enhanced oil recovery.
Anthropogenic CO2 used in place of natural CO2 for enhanced oil recovery can help reduce our carbon footprint.
In terms of the individual project economics, there's a lot out there which is interesting because it can be quite profitable. One of the things that you would look at would be enhanced oil recovery, where you take CO2 from, let's say, a coal-fired power station and you put it underground in an oil field or a gas field, which is in decline. And what that does is it increases the pressure in those fields and it helps you take more out faster. And that provides a nice economic incentive for a company to invest in these technology.
The current techniques used for enhanced oil recovery can be used to store anthropogenic CO2 permanently underground. Putting CO2 into underground geologic reservoirs is called geologic CO2 sequestration, or carbon capture and storage. The CO2 could be stored in depleted oil reservoirs, deep unminable coal seams, and deep saline reservoirs. Each ton of this stored carbon creates a credit that can be sold on the market. In this way, the cost of implementing sequestration can be financed through the sale of carbon credits.
Apache Canada Limited is injecting anthropogenic CO2 into the ground in northwestern Alberta for enhanced oil recovery. That CO2 is going to remain under the ground after the project is finished. There are many economic and environmental benefits to this.
I think it will play a major role. There's great interest in geological sequestration, where companies who emit carbon dioxide can capture that carbon dioxide and pipe it to a geological reservoir and bury it in the ground.
Now, as we're looking at building new power plants, we need to seriously consider what the environmental ramifications of those plants are going to be. We're going to approach the reduction of greenhouse gas from a number of different angles. Part of that matrix is going to be looking at carbon capture and sequestration technologies.
In an encouraging trend, energy use around the world has slowly shifted away from fuels that release a great deal of carbon dioxide toward fuels that release somewhat less of this heat-trapping gas. Wood was the first major source of energies used by humans. With the dawn of the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century, coal became the dominant energy source. By the mid-19th century, oil had replaced coal in dominance, fueling the internal combustion engines that were eventually used in automobiles. By the 20th century, natural gas began to be used worldwide for heating and lighting.
In this progression, the combustion of natural gas releases less carbon dioxide than oil, which in turn releases less of the gas than either coal or wood.
Is climate change bad or good?
What do you think? A. Always very bad. B. Bad. C. Sometimes bad, but sometimes good. Or D. Good.
This shows the projected changes in agricultural productivity due to climate change.
The increasing rate of melting of ice in the Arctic Ocean has led to speculation that the Northwest Passage may become viable for commercial shipping at some point in the future.
This route would save 5,800 miles on the route from Asia to Europe compared with the Panama Canal, possibly leading to a diversion of some traffic to that route. However, such a route would still hold significant problems due to ice, as well as unresolved territorial issues.
Chapter 9. Finally. Hey, some things to think about.
Things to think about. Is living in a hot climate using a lot of air conditioning good? Should old-growth forests be cut down? Should I junk my 1988 Toyota and buy a Prius hybrid car? Should we go nuclear for power?
What should I do?
Should homes switch from natural gas to electricity? The city of Berkeley will no longer allow natural gas pipes in many new buildings starting January 1, 2020. It's the first city in California to pass such a law. Should I switch from using paper towels to the electric hand dryer?
This is nice and clean and leaves less mess in the restroom. But it probably uses non-renewable fossil fuels.
This is messier and uses a renewable resource. But how much energy is needed to make the paper? And how about the disposal problem?
Maybe. This is the quickest and simplest way.
Should I switch from plastic straws to paper straws?
How about not using a straw at all?
Should I switch from plastic bags to paper bags?
If all the shoppers using plastic bags last year had used paper bags instead, they would have increased the amount of solid waste by over 100 million tons and taken up 7 times more space in landfills.
This is a comparison of paper versus plastic.
This is another comparison of paper versus plastic in terms of contribution to air pollution.
Should I turn on the hot or the cold water faucet when washing my hands?
Chapter 10. Combined cycle and cogeneration high-efficiency steam engines.
This is a chart of the electricity generation efficiencies.
It is important to keep in mind that although solar photovoltaic, solar thermal, and wind turbines have low efficiencies, the energy source is free.
This is another chart of electricity generation efficiencies. Again, note that although geothermal power has a low efficiency, the energy source is free.
This is a diagram of a typical steam cycle coal power plant. Efficiencies are generally in the 30 to 40% range.
Should we build more, but better, fossil fuel power plants?
This is a diagram of a combined cycle power plant. Efficiencies can reach up in the 60% range.
This shows the improvement in power plant efficiency over time. Thomas Newcomen's engine operated at atmospheric pressure for pumping water out of mines, and was only 0.5% efficient. James Watt's engine operated at a much higher temperature, pressure, and speed, and got up to 4% efficiency.
With steam turbines operating at much higher temperatures, pressures, and speeds, the efficiencies rose from 3% to 42%.
With the newer combined cycle steam turbines using natural gas, efficiencies are projected to get above 60%, and possibly even as high as 65%.
Cogeneration in any type of power plant There is a lot of waste heat that is the exhaust steam or hot gases of combustion after they have done their work in pushing a piston or turning a turbine. These exhaust gases are still well above room temperature, but are at too low a temperature and pressure to do any more mechanical work.
These exhaust gases or steam can be utilized to preheat the water for steam generation and, in many cases, are just vented into the atmosphere. A combined generation, or combined heat and power (CHP), power plant is one that uses exhaust gases that can no longer be utilized to perform mechanical work for such applications as space heating buildings and residences, and for producing hot water for general use.
This compares a conventional power plant with a combined generation, or combined heat and power (CHP), power plant. This is called cogeneration, the overall efficiency of a cogeneration power plant, in terms of both mechanical and thermal power produced, can be increased beyond that of conventional plants.
Thus, a cogeneration combined cycle power plant can have overall efficiencies well above 60%, and possibly up into the 80 or 90% range. However, these plants must be situated in areas where the waste heat can effectively be utilized, such as in large cities in colder climates. Cogeneration combined cycle power plants are so efficient. Why aren't more being built? This is a chart of worldwide electric power generation as of 2016. Coal leads at 38%. Then natural gas at 23%. Hydroelectric at 16%. Nuclear at 10%. And oil at 4%.
Renewable energy, principally wind and solar but excluding hydroelectric, is only 8%. Here in the U.S., we still get 81% of our energy and 63% of our electricity from fossil fuels.
Oil in the form of gasoline and diesel fuels 91% of our transportation. Electric cars and trains get almost all of their energy from power plants, which mostly use coal and natural gas.
This is a chart of the worldwide prime electric power generation by type.
This is the U.S. electricity generation by type. As of 2014, we have coal leading at 39%, followed by natural gas at 27%, and then nuclear at 20%. Renewables, including hydroelectric, account for 13%.
On average, a typical coal-burning power plant in 2013 was about 33% efficient in converting heat energy into electrical power. A gas-fired plant was about 42% efficient in a natural gas combined cycle power plant, in which waste heat from a natural gas turbine is used to power a steam turbine. The generation efficiency may be as high as 60%.
Looking at overall efficiencies, we note that the energy generation efficiency from power source to plug is only about 30%.
Chapter 11. Should I sell my old Chevy and buy a Tesla?
Should I sell my old Chevy and buy a Tesla? Electric motors can be as efficient as 98%, with an average of around 90%. Internal combustion engines can be as efficient as 40%, with an average of around 33%. As mentioned before, electric motors can be as efficient as 98%, with an average of around 90%.
Internal combustion engines can be as efficient as 40%, with an average of around 33%.
But let's now look at the whole picture from well or mine to wheels.
Electric power plants are about 35% efficient, and with another loss of 10% of that in transmission lines, power conversion, and in batteries. We're down to maybe 32%. Efficiency from well, or mine, to wheels.
So, when considering electric vehicles to internal combustion engines, it is important to look at the whole picture from well, or mine, to wheels.
Or even from cradle to grave, looking at the energy required for manufacture and disposal.
The well to wheels tracks the efficiency of the entire energy generation, all the way from the initial source, an oil well in the case of an internal combustion vehicle, or perhaps a mine, gas field, oil well, solar panel or wind turbine in the case of an electric vehicle.
So, should I sell my old Chevy and buy a Tesla?
Or maybe I should buy a new Chevy Sonic instead of a Tesla?
This shows the cumulative cost of ownership by year in dollars.
This is from a vehicle cost calculator website. We see that although there is not much difference in the cost per mile, there is much less CO2 emission by an electric vehicle due to the lower emissions by the electric power plant.
This graph shows the cumulative cost of ownership by year for each vehicle, including fuel, tires, maintenance, registration, license, insurance, and loan payment, assuming a 5-year loan with a 10% down payment. Year 1 on the graph represents the 10% down payment, plus the first year's total operating costs.
This is from a vehicle cost calculator website. Again, we see that although there is not much difference in the cost per mile, there is much less CO2 emission by an electric vehicle due to the lower emissions by the electric power plant.
Chapter 12. In addition to greenhouse gases, don't we have other environmental concerns? Like oil drilling and pipelines in Alaska, for example.
The construction of the pipeline and the increase in oil production brought about significant growth of Alaska's economy and population.
This is a comparison of the area of the ANWR, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, to that of the continental U.S.
This shows the area of the ANWR, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, relative to the entire state of Alaska.
This shows the land use of the ANWR, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge.
This shows the location of the oil-producing areas in the ANWR.
Table of Contents, Global Warming Part 3.
Thanks for watching. Please watch some more of my great videos.